Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Steven. Nice to see you. Welcome back. So today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about testing during in-flight training. I'm coming up on my first year anniversary, that is March 1st, and getting ready for that anniversary also means getting ready for being recertified, and we call that recurrent. And so I've spent the last couple hours today working on some computer class work that I have to have done before my recurrent training in March. And it really reminded me that I hadn't chatted with you folks about testing. We talked about studying, but we really never talked about testing so much. And it really is a terrifying aspect of training for some of us. I was super anxious. I hadn't been a student for 30 years. So testing was scary for me, and I didn't feel I had a plan B, so this had to work. One of our instructors shared a little of her own experience before we actually got too deep into training. She talked about how she was a rotten student in school, but when she came to flight attendant training, she recognized that this was really something she wanted, and so she applied herself like she had to nothing else. And I identified with her quite a bit. I was a rotten student. I went to 18 different schools from first grade through through the end of high school. I went to 18 schools. That's a whole story. I was just a rotten student. I was always behind or ahead, and I just at some point just stopped really being motivated. And at 47 years old, I didn't have the experience of testing with any success to feel comfortable. But I heard her experience. Oh, the thing that she said, the cherry on top was, she said, first week, she said, those people who test well don't always make the best flight attendants. People who get hundreds on all of their tests, they test well, but they may not have the empathy, the caring, the love, whatever the characteristics a good flight attendant has. They may not have as much of that, but they may test well. And that gave me some hope, because I have all of the things, I think, that are required to be a good flight attendant, but testing skills, not so much, So I took that as a great motivator for me. So I'm going to offer that to you as well. So don't feel you have to get hundreds on every test to be a good flight attendant, because you have those skills that will help you be the best you can be. Testing might not be one of them. Just get a passing grade. That's all I care about, right? All right, so something that also helped, once I actually got into the crux of it, we would study, have class work on something, and then we would test it on the next day. And those first couple tests were really stressful. There was a lot of anxiety. But after the maybe second or third test, the rhythm that we got into, the pattern that we got into in terms of studying, coming into the classroom, being prepared for the test, testing, and then passing, kind of helped propel me towards the next test with a little less anxiety. I'm going to mention anxiety later too, and how I got through it. During tests, boy, I'm not sure if you can hear the aircraft that are passing over, but we got a lot of air traffic today. It sounds like a lot of military jets passing over, like really fast. It's a little weird. That one was not, that's not one of them, but it's been a little weird to hear that. Let's see, during tests, nothing should be on your desk. Nothing. In fact, I may not even wear a smartwatch. In my training class, we were allowed to wear a smartwatch. I think that's changed because people can't stop ruining things, right? I want to say someone probably, sent themselves messages or texts on their smartwatch to help them pass. I don't know, but I wouldn't even wear a smartwatch. Nothing will be on your desk, just a pencil. No water bottles, nothing. The test questions were passed out. and the test sheets were passed out, we had 2 different forms. Your situation may be different, I don't know. But for us, we had 2 different forms, test A and test B. They had the same answers, but they weren't in the same places. You know, they were mixed up a little bit, so that it stopped people from kind of glancing over at a neighbor's page and getting a test answer. So it helped stop people from cheating. Remember which, if that's the case, if they do this for you, remember which form you have, because when you turn it in, you want to make sure you're putting it in the right baskets. Let's see. Most answers, most test questions, I should say, were multiple choice answers. Usually 3 or 4 multiple choice options. There were some write-ins that was mostly city codes, military time, that kind of thing. Follow directions. Now, if you watched my video about the goldfish bowl question, one of the reasons they even do a goldfish bowl question is to see if you can follow directions. If you did and you got to training, continue to follow directions. They're going to tell you exactly what they expect of you. Exactly. Listen, follow directions. I wrote 2 examples of things here that I recognized other people not doing, and they definitely suffered for it. Excuse me. So, they gave us the direction. If you fill out an answer incorrectly on your answer sheet, you meant to write D, or you thought the answer was D, but then you change your mind and it's really B. So they told us, cross out the old answer, circle the correct answer, and then write the correct answer next to it. So cross out the old, circle the new, rewrite the new answer next to it. Now, that may not be the case for your airline or your testing, but that was what they gave us. That was the direction they gave us. And that may have changed since. Who knows? Oh, I should have told you. Nothing I'm saying is from my airline, just kind of my experience. And I'm not going to be sharing too much information with you. Nothing that's security related or any of the answers, honestly, because that's really up to you. But this is what happened for me. So in my airline, they told us that, you know, cross out the old, circle the new, rewrite the new one. There were people, I know there were people who didn't do one of those things. Like they didn't rewrite the right answer. And so they may have had the right answer circled, but they didn't follow directions, and that question was graded wrong. And wouldn't that be the worst, to fail out of flight attendant school because you didn't rewrite one letter? You know what I mean? So follow direction. The other example of follow direction was, when you're done, put the answer sheet in the right basket or slot or whatever. If they tell you to put the answer sheet A in the basket with A or B in the basket with B, face down, do it. I tell you, people would leave the room and they would just throw their sheet in a basket because they thought that was it. I don't know. And you know, if you put your form in the wrong basket, they're grading it with a different grading sheet. Wrong, right? All right, so follow direction. The rest of the things, I've got a couple pages here of just tips that either my experience, warnings, or things I would do differently, okay? So first off, again, this may not be the case for every airline, but I think it's general enough. If there was a question that I did not understand, there were instructors in the room that allowed me to go up to them, usually stand in line, go up to them and ask them to rephrase the question. I think that was awfully generous of the airline. If you're doing a phone interview, I think one of the things they tell you during a phone interview is that they can ask you the question, they can't interpret the question, and they can't rephrase the question. You have to answer that question however they gave it to you, right? But in the exam, my instructors, they were generous enough to allow us to ask them to rephrase a question. And because our classes weren't so large, because they were broken up into groups, the instructors generally knew our personalities and how we approach our training. And so they could maybe rephrase the question to something that allowed us to go, oh, yeah, I know that. So if they allow that, take advantage. It can't hurt, right? Multiple choice. Now, again, I hadn't taken a test in 30 years, so multiple choice seemed still kind of mysterious to me. Multiple choice, frequently you're going to have 3 or 4 potential options for answers. One answer is going to be ridiculous. You know, the answers might be, the options might be 1, 2, 3, 4, and elephant. Chances are elephant will not be an answer, right? So you can cancel, get rid of that one. The remaining ones, they're going to slip some half-truths in there, things that are almost correct, with maybe additional information, or maybe they would have taken something out of the answer, but it still looks right. And then there's going to be the one that's correct. Look for half-truths. That's typically the way I approach a multiple choice question. So one is going to be a stupid answer. The other one will be kind of right, but not completely right. And then you'll have another choice. So for me, it was really choosing one, whatever seemed the most complete answer. Don't second guess yourself too much. You know, how often do you answer a question and then go, oof, that's not right. Let me cross that out and answer it a different way. That happened all the time. I heard about it all the time. I did it. And, you know, I'll tell you, so often you have the right answer the first time. You know, so before you second guess yourself, really look at that question and look at the way you answered it. And that might be the right answer, you know. So don't second guess yourself too often. Let's see what else here. Read every question thoroughly. That's a given, right? But again, today doing my recurrent, one of the questions I had to answer, they threw in a little tricky bit into the question, and I answered it by instinct, and I got it wrong because I really didn't read the question thoroughly. If I had read the question slowly and thoroughly and not just looking for words I recognized, I would have gotten that question right the first time. Take your time. If you're given 2 or 3 hours during your final exam, for example, take your time. Don't be afraid to be the last person in that room. I still to this day remember a class in high school. It was a final exam for a math class. And the entire class finished and left the room. It was me and one other guy sitting next to me at a desk. And we just looked up at each other, and he said, "This is impossible." This last question. And I finished that last question, and I left the room. Somehow, magically, I knew in high school that it was okay to be the last person in the room testing. In training, somehow I was trying to impress everybody. I was trying to be the best, you know, candidate. And that caused me to be very stressed and to maybe lose focus. So I really had to kind of remind myself and breathe a little bit and say it's okay if half the room has already left and finished their test. Don't stress yourself. It's okay to be the last person in the room. Don't rush. So this is, again, don't rush. Stay focused. The final exam for this flight attendant training, the final exam, I started off reading questions. I circled, and I think the first 10 questions for some reason seemed really easy. So I was just reading it. Oh, yep, got that. Reading a question. Oh, yep, got that. Got it. Yep. 9 questions in, I hit a question where I was like, I don't know. And it made me look up at my answer sheet. I had skipped the first line. I had skipped the first answer line. And I had started answering everything one line below. Can you see where the problem lies? If I hadn't looked up at that and recognized it, I would have finished the whole test. And I may have caught myself later, but I may not have. So I had to go back. In those first 9 questions, I had to go back and circle the correct answers. Of course, follow directions that they had given me for what, if I changed an answer. But if I was rushing because I thought, oh, this is an easy question, got it, and I circled the answer, I circled the wrong spot. If I hadn't caught myself, who knows what would have happened. So don't rush, focus. Go over every other question and answer before passing in the test. I know that the first test I took, the first schematics test I took, I thought I aced it because I really spent 6 weeks memorizing schematics. I thought I aced it. I popped the test in the basket, and the minute it left my hand, I knew I had neglected to write down the quantity of one of the items on that test. I knew it. But I had already released it, and it was in the basket, and that was it. So I walked out, and I'm like, oh, man. And, I still got a good score, but, make sure before you let go of that test, you are satisfied with your answers. Okay, now, once you finish the test, right, and if you are one of those lucky people who was focused enough, you're taking your time, you're pacing yourself, you're doing all the right things, quite a few people have already left the room, they've already finished their test. Chances are they're gathered right outside that room, and they're all loud. Don't be one of them. So, when you leave the room, you're going to be like, oh my God, that was so great. Oh, you know what? You finished early too. Yay. There's going to be a lot of chattering and conversation. And that's going to be throughout the whole of training. Remember to try to use your inside voice during this time, because when you're trying to study and take your test, this is what happened to me. I'm in that room trying to focus, and I could hear everyone on the other side of that door, and it was so distracting. So if you're the person who feels confident in their test and you pass it in and you leave the room and you're like, hey, high five, stop, please. Be thoughtful of the people who are still testing. Let's see. All right, while you're out there, trying to use your inside voice, being thoughtful about the people who are still studying, try not to do one thing, which is almost impossible. When you're out there after you finish your test, you're going to be like, hey, how did you answer this question? It was really hard. How'd you answer that one? They're going to tell you, and chances are it's going to be different than the way you answered the question. And you'll think, oh, man, I got that wrong. I know I got that wrong. Or I know I got that right. And I'm going to brag about how I'm so confident I got this score right. The guy next to you got it right. You got it wrong. And you look like a jerk, So when you're out there after you finish taking your exam and there are other people in the room taking their tests, you're remaining quiet, you're remaining civil, and you're trying really hard not to compare how you answer questions, because it'll be a source of stress and anxiety. Just trust me on this. All right, so after many of our exams, after many of our tests would be graded and they'd be handed out so we could see our scores. You could see which questions you got wrong. I didn't write this down, but I will talk about it. So we could see what questions we got wrong. We couldn't make notes about which question we got wrong. We could try to remember the number. But they're going to go through. They went through, in our case, maybe not your airline. In our case, they went through the test question by question. If there were 20 questions, they went through all 20 of them, and they'd say, does anyone have a question on question number 4? Does anyone, not understand why they may have gotten it wrong? That's the point. If you got question 4 wrong and your answer was A, it was really C, the instructor would walk through the question, phrase it, and then give the right answer, and then maybe why that was the right answer, maybe why your answer was incorrect. They won't be smart about it and try to like, laugh at you, but they're definitely going to be there to sort of say, well, I may understand why you answer that way, but this is the correct answer. Don't fight them. Don't challenge them. Don't debate them. They're right. Okay? So, don't challenge the instructors. They're going to win every time. Okay? So if you know that you got questions 4 and 8 wrong, remember that number, 4 and 8. Remember those 2 questions you got wrong. Try to remember how you answered them, because most airlines allow you at least 1 retake or 2 retakes. I'm so glad I talked about this. I didn't write this down. My airline allowed us 2 retakes. So if you failed a test twice, you could retake the test. You could not retake your final. You could not retake the same test twice. But, so you got those 2 questions wrong. For some reason, those were the 2 that stopped you from passing that test. You could retake that next test during lunch or something. And then remember, 4 and 8 were the ones you struggled with, and then maybe by chance correct your answers. So retakes, most airlines aren't terribly generous. Some only allow you 1 retake, and mine gave me 2. I would really strongly recommend not using those retakes early on, because the people who use those retakes during schematics, for example, they had to go the rest of training getting A's, knowing they did not have a lifeline. How stressful is that? Okay. All right. Don't beat yourself up for not getting hundreds. Try not to be the person who collects hundreds. Try to be the person who passes each test. It's not bad to get 100, and it's not bad to want to get 100, but if you're stressing yourself out so much because everyone else around you is getting hundreds and you're not, relax. Just pass. Just get those darn wings. You know what I mean? Remember what my instructor said. Those people who get hundreds on every test may not have the social skills that you have to make you the better flight attendant. Okay? So don't beat yourself up. If you get, one of your friends is like, oh, I've got hundreds on every test so far. I'm so excited. And you've consistently got 93s. You're passing. You're passing. They're not better than you are. And conversely, for you who do like to compete and are wonderkind and you're getting hundreds on every test, try to have a little humility. And remember, the people who are around you are like, they're sitting at the table like this because they got an 89. And you're over here going, yay, I got hundreds. Like, relax, have some humility. All right. Don't let the stress of testing get to you. Find a way of letting out that anxiety. For me, it was crying. I love to cry. I'll watch Ellen just to watch Ellen DeGeneres give a car away to a teacher, and I'll cry. I love it. Before every exam, before every test, there was a column that I would stand behind so that no one saw me. Everyone saw me. And I would cry. I would cry and cry and cry. It seemed the harder I cried, the better my test score was. I don't know. But I was very anxious and I cried a lot. My roommate at the time in training kind of made fun of me. He kind of ridiculed me. He said, calm down, chill, relax. It's not that bad. I dealt with it as I did, and I cried a lot. And that was fine. I got through it. That's how I handle stress. I cry and I eat. You manage your stress however you want to manage it. Final exam. All right, so I did not get hundreds on everything. I did get a lot of hundreds for me because, like I told you, I'm a rotten student, but I wasn't out there trying to collect hundreds. There were some people in my class that were just amazing, and I was envious. I was envious of them. I wouldn't say I resented them, one of them. This one kid, I don't resent him. I was just more jealous. But this one kid who frequently enough sat in front of me, you know, in my class, they'd say, all right, so these people, please stand. These people you knew had gotten 100 on that test. And so they stood up and everyone kind of applauded. And this kid always seemed to have his arms ready to push himself out of the chair to stand up. He was just always ready to stand up. And chances are he was standing up because he got hundreds on probably everything. But that final exam, the final exam, boy, it was so stressful. Looking back, I want to say this is one more tip. Looking back, none of the tests were really hard. The instructors had given us all the information. They had stressed on things that they knew would be on the test. And they kind of let us know, by the way, wink, wink, pay attention, you know. So the final exam, looking back, wasn't as difficult as it could have been, I think. But it was, the pressure was just so great. But I was out there crying like a rainstorm before I took this test. But when we got in for the final exam, they graded our tests and they let us back in the room. By the way, if you got back in the room, just saying, this is not everyone's case, just saying, but if you got back in the room, you probably passed. If you don't get back in the room, it might be a different story. But, you know, we got back in the room, we're sitting there, and they said, you know, one person from the PM class got a perfect score on their final exam, and this is who it was, and he stood up, and we all applauded. And on the AM class, 4 of us got a perfect score, and they named 3 people, and then they said Stephen. I looked over at the other Stephen. And like, then the instructor said, Pereira. I always wear a big ring. Bam! My hand went on that table and I was like, are you kidding? And I stood up. I mean, it was in my head. I heard like applause like it was the Oscars, you know, but everyone's probably like, yeah, all right, whatever. But I was just so excited. And that kid, poised to stand up, settled back in his chair. And it was probably the most satisfying moment of my whole training. But, so, those are my tips and my stories and my warnings about testing for in-flight training. If you have any of your own, please drop them below. Make any comments. Thumbs up are nice. Feel free to say anything you want, as long as it's nice. Subscribe. I do really enjoy making these videos. I really hope that some of them are useful to you. So feel free and subscribe. There is that little notification, little bell. So if you click that, you'll always know when I film a new video. And again, thanks for watching. It really is a pleasure and an honor, and the ultimate honor that you even bother watching this video. So thank you very much, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.